My own personal instinct is important because what I'm interested in is what's the differences from me and others.
This is the Creative Voyage podcast, a long-form interview show with the mission to help creative professionals level up. I'm your host, Mario De Picolzuan. I'm a creative professional myself, active in the fields of graphic design, art direction, and creative consulting, working with companies such as Kinfolk, Menu, and Sonos. Through season 1 of this podcast, I present in-depth interviews with some of the world's most inspiring creative professionals, revealing the stories that shape their lives and careers, plus actionable strategies to help you take your mindset and skills to the next level. I invite you to join me on this journey. In this episode, I talk to a fellow graphic designer and art director.
My name is Nao Nozawa. I'm a Japanese and I'm a Tokyo-based graphic designer. After graduated Tama University in Tokyo, I started my career for 3 years in Tokyo, based in advertisement agency, and moved to London when I was 26. I'm now based in Tokyo and working as a freelance.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Nao through a mutual friend while I was visiting Tokyo for the very first time at the beginning of this year. We met over a delicious lunch at Kane Tanaka, which is a minimalist haven in the form of a restaurant designed by Hiroshi Sugimoto, who's a Japanese photographer and architect. After our brief time spent together, I was fascinated with Nao, so I decided to ask her to be one of my first podcast guests, and luckily she said yes. Nao is currently working as a freelancer, spending her time between working with Tokyo-based studio Artless and working with a range of clients independently. What's drawn me to her work is the variety of her projects and the way she infuses her personality in her work with seemingly effortless ease and working between different disciplines, including graphic design, art direction, but also accessories and textile design. She's also often exhibiting her personal work and has her self-published book sold in design capitals such as London, Paris, New York, and LA. In this episode, we're going to listen to the highlights of the conversation I had with Nao in February of 2018. We cover topics such as dealing with feedback and criticism, the importance of personal work and self-initiated projects, the specifics of freelancing and working with clients in Japan, and much more. Nao knew by age 10 that she wanted to do something creative for a living, and by 18 had her first commission. But her parents didn't allow her to specialize too early, fearing she'd be too narrow in her worldview. The advice is one she now gives to young professionals. Don't focus so squarely on graphic design that you don't know what's going on in the other fields. I started my conversation with Nao asking her what she would advise her younger self when she was just starting out.
The first thing is trust on instinct. That is very important to me. Mm-hmm. When I was 20 or 21, I was in uni, and actually I didn't enjoy my life in uni that much because there are more than 100 students in my department.
Okay.
And it was a kind of competitive a bit.
Okay.
And I think it happens all the time, maybe in the design industry, but I think it never makes sense to compare with the other people. I think designers should focus on what I really want to design and what I really want to express. So don't to be afraid of trust on instinct. That is a very important advice to myself.
Between working with the design agency Artless and her independent work, Nao often collaborates with assistants, and they are usually younger professionals fresh out of university. I was curious to hear what advice she would give a young person entering into this kind of work, and more specifically, what she wished her assistants perhaps already knew coming out of their design schools.
The young people, like 23 or 25, like after graduating uni, they are very enthusiastic, which I really like, but the skill of typeface is always kind of hard to teach, I mean, I think in university, the typography lessons is experimental. People who were studying graphic design, like making posters and magazines, and that kind of people were very talented, but still very experimental for everything. In general, the graphic design work is always needs to be easy to read, and especially in Japanese, there's 3 different letters. I mean, kanji and hiragana and katakana. It's quite difficult to combine all the three different letters on the paper. So I think it's always better to study and get experience about the typographies before enter this industry.
Yeah, I've noticed a very similar thing with a lot of people who are just like starting as interns or when they're done with their university. Even some basic things, for example, in typography, how to use different types of dashes.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who have been in a design school for 3 or 5 years. They come out and they don't know that there's a hyphen, that there's an N dash, that there's an M dash, and how to use those, which is like a very basic principle or a rule in a craft of typography.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you noticed?
I don't know if it's happened in other country, but in Tokyo, I think now young people don't get to know the people working in other industry, not only for the graphic design. They love graphic design so much, but they are not very much interested in the other design, like other art, like music and movies and film, like architecture and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Graphic design is not only about design, it's always related to the society. I mean, I think they are not very interested in any kind of things happen in this world. So that's quite serious issues for me. For example, last weekend, I asked my assistant, "What are you doing this weekend?" And he said that I'm going to dinner with my friends. And okay, and what are you doing now, son? And I said, I'm going to see the movies. Oh, what kind of movie? Blah 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 blah. And I told her about the movie I love, and he didn't know that. It's okay, but he's never interested in movies, and he somehow said, because movie is not my, like, how can I say, not my world. I mean, he's a graphic designer, so he's not a filmmaker, and he's not a movie designer, so he is not interested in a movie, but it's so weird to me.
Do you have any feeling why that might be the case?
I think maybe when I was in uni, there was not that much, like I didn't have an iPhone, for example, and there was no Facebook and Instagram when I was a teenager. So I need to Google everything or go to, like going to theater to get the information, right?
Yeah.
But right now they have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everything, so they can get the information and all the information from very easily from the social networks. So they were curious about it because it's general. There are too many informations and they can't find what they are really interested in. That I think that's the point, because they are always browsing Instagram, but it's just browsing.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast is a famous quote often attributed to Peter Drucker, but probably first mentioned by the consultation company Giga Information Group. Anyhow, culture is immensely important, and every culture has its specifics. As a creative professional based in Tokyo, Nao works predominantly on the Japanese market, but she also has international experience. I wanted to hear if she thinks there are any specific challenges to freelancing in Japan.
I think in Tokyo, as you probably know, population of Tokyo is very high, very high. It's very competitive, actually. That's the biggest thing for me. And so there are very talented, very number of designers who are very talented. And so that's why we need to focus on what I really want and what I can do and what I cannot do. That's very important. I think being freelance is not so very hard in Japan generally. But from the financial point of view, it's kind of a bit hard to get the contract with the clients working the monthly payment. Do you understand?
Yeah. Like a monthly retainer.
Exactly. It's quite hard because in Japan, the magazine industry is getting a very low.
Yeah, but it seems like that's happening in a lot of places.
So that's why it's quite difficult to get a contract with monthly. That's a kind of very big issues for freelance designers, I think.
So how to maintain a positive cash flow?
Exactly. I only know the Japan and London, but compared with them, I think Japan is all the schedules is very short compared with London. And the designers' populations are much higher than London. So very, very competitive and very tough work.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest issues in in Tokyo, I think. But generally, in Tokyo is such a big metropolitan, but other cities is much better than Tokyo. So I think if the people from overseas are interested in Japan, I think it's better to not focus on Tokyo, but also like Osaka and other cities like Fukuoka and Sapporo. And those cities are still big, and there are many other clients, like local clients, which is very nice.
And are there any specific cultural norms that international designers should be aware of if they ever work with Japanese clients?
I personally think Japan is more like Japanese are a bit more business minds than the European people. Not so very friendly, I think, but it's kind of good. It's easier to work with them, I personally think. All the clients in Japan are very professional, so which is a bit kind of easy to work. They have their idea, and also they have a spares to listen to our ideas, so, which is good.
Hey friends, you're listening to the Creative Voyage podcast. We are roughly in the middle of this episode, so it's time for a short break. There's no team behind this show. It's solely produced and edited by me, Mario. I don't have any sponsors, and I have no plans to add any. Nevertheless, I can use all the help I can get growing the show. If you like what you've heard so far, there's 3 simple things you can do for me and future episodes. Number 1, review the show on Apple Podcasts. Number 2, tell a friend and share a link on social media. And number 3, visit the shop on creative.voyage/shop and support the show by buying bespoke Creative Voyage products. Thanks everyone, let's get back to the show. Growth is a crucial factor of long-term career success and personal satisfaction. I was curious to hear how Nao manages that part of her career. How are you making sure that besides working on the projects for your clients, you also develop as a designer, creative professional, and make sure you're continually learning and growing?
I'm still making my own personal books, personal artwork. And I launched my personal artwork book in London when I was in London. And that book is available in Paris and London. So I'm still claiming to make my own personal works. Mm-hmm. So that is quite important to me now.
Okay, and in what way do you think that helps you in your client work?
Because my own personal instinct is important, because what I'm interested in is what's the differences from me and others. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand.
That's the point for client to ask myself I don't want to do the same things from others. So I make my own personal works and the client see that and they found, okay, she's that kind of person. There are many kind of person, but I really want to focus on telling what kind of person I am. So that's why my personal artwork shows me who I am. That is my good portfolio for me.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put all the clients' works on my portfolio. I also want to put my personal artwork in my portfolio, which makes my portfolio more interesting.
So it sounds like that through your personal work, then you are getting client commissions.
Exactly. Some of the magazine industry interested me and they offered me some collage works, which was based on my personal artwork. So it was really nice experience.
And then you're also exhibiting your work, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Once 2 years, I had an exhibition.
So let's say a designer doesn't cultivate their personal work, but they want to. They would be willing to start. Do you have any advice? How to begin?
I think I was just lucky, so I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
I published my own personal artwork book. That was a big things to happen in my career in the art industry. So I think it's better to make a zine or a book, magazine or books, and showing the books for all the people you know, and there must be some opportunities.
Was that book released through a publisher, or did you self-publish it?
The first time was a self-publishing.
Let me just try to dissect this a little bit. So you made a concept, you designed a book, you decided to print it, You did it all by yourself, right?
Exactly.
And how did you distribute the book?
I just I just visit all the bookstores in London.
So you just contacted them directly?
Exactly.
And how was the response?
Actually, it was really good, and almost all of them have my books, except my book. It was really good.
Oh, wow.
And in New York and Paris, I did the same thing, and it was good. They accepted my book, so it was like commissions.
How many copies did you make?
The first one was 100 copies, and the second one was 200.
Cool. So I'm trying to figure it out. You made the books, you had the books, and then you just like emailed the bookstores?
Yes, at first time I emailed them and they respond me, and I visited them and just to keep it like a 10 pieces of my books or 20 or something, and now it's sold out.
That's great.
So I think keep moving on. That is very important. Don't hesitate.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I'll try to take that. Giving and receiving feedback is one of the crucial skills every creative professional has to learn. How we are dealing with criticism, both self-criticism and external critique, is what can make or break our long-term relationship with our craft and our community. I wanted to hear how Nao navigates through that.
All the voices from others, I really love that. I really appreciate you for all.
So both good and, let's say, bad.
Actually, the good one never make me, how can I say, never make me lead to further. But the worst one, I mean, your work doesn't, I don't like your work. So that kind of things lead to me further than I think, always. For example, if I say something good feedback for others, it was just good. But if I had a bad feeling from someone's work, it was my instinct. And I'm curious about how people think about my work, and the bad feedback always from the straight away, right? That's the point. So I really appreciate that.
And what would you say to those who are struggling with receiving that feedback, that critique?
Well, I think the bad critics means there are chance to be better, right?
Yeah.
So I always teach that to clients. If someone gives you the bad critics, which means you can be a better.
Yeah, true.
That's the point.
Let's shift gears a little bit. What would you say is the thing you're struggling with the most right now?
In terms of business-wise, maybe work alongside like clients for long term is essential. And right now I'm struggling with that. It's not only for financial matters, but also creative matters, because work alongside the clients for long term, like 1 year and 2 years, it's let me learn how design affects on the project. I really love to work like that, but I'm struggling with it.
What do you think is behind that? Do you think clients don't have like a general awareness of that, or there's a lack of budget?
Actually, that's because of the budget. I want to work with the one client at least 3 years. But it's normally 1 year or 1 year and a half or something. But I want to keep at least 3 years, and like 5 years, 10 years, and more. That would be better.
Do you have any ideas or intuitions on how to position yourself and make that happen?
Maybe I need to make my studio bigger. I mean, I'm just working alone and with a couple of assistants. But if I want to make my studio bigger, I need more assistants, and maybe the financial problems there. I have to be bigger.
You mentioned working with assistants, and that part of business, the delegation and learning how to work with other people and utilize their talents. It's something that I've been struggling lately. It just feels hard, especially coming from more like a loner freelance perspective, where you enjoy working by yourself and you know how to work with yourself, and then you're on that tipping point of you need help but maybe you don't, and it's a very delicate balance. So I'm curious, how are you dealing with that delegation and growing your team?
Yeah, it's actually always a problem to me too. I actually want to focus on my work as an art director. So the graphic design side, from the graphic designer point of view, for example, I will make the draft, but I don't make all the samples, If I had an assistant, I will make a draft and they can do all other sample designs.
Yeah.
And I can check that and having discuss and make it better.
Yeah.
It's much better to work with the assistant.
Mistakes happen. They're part of the process, and a valuable part if we are willing to learn from them. I've asked Nao if there were any specific mistakes she made or regrets she had looking back on her journey so far, and what she learned from that.
At the very early moment of my career, working career, I was not very much interested in doing the web design and another textile design, which related to graphic. But I always wanted to focus on the paper, the graphic design paper. So I was not interested in web and textile and other things. But once I got the chance to design some of the other genres like textile and accessories in London, I suddenly realized that it's always absolutely related to the graphic. And actually, my work for accessories and textile pushes me farther than I think. So if I was interested in the other genres, not only the graphics on paper, at the early moment of my career, I think it's much faster to be here. I was kind of stubborn about graphic on papers. I think that was a mistake. I should be more open-minded.
We've come to the very end of the conversation I had with Nao. I try to wrap up every episode with some form of actionable or inspirational advice from my guests. Here's what Nao generously shared with me.
The first one is, as I said, trust on instinct. This is very important.
Yeah.
Trust on instinct. And the second one is learning from the failure every time. For example, as you said, I publish my own personal books and visit all the bookstores in London. And so there must be some fails and the bad feedbacks. But there must be something I can learn from the bad feedbacks. So the try and errors is the most important for me. So never give up from the failures.
Yeah.
That is very important. And the final one is, it's kind of related to the second one, but don't be afraid of the new adventure, meeting a new people and find a new style of the work style. And that is very important to me.
Alright, for everybody at home keeping score, I think we touched on a lot of useful information for anybody out there interested in graphic design, freelancing, and more broadly about growing as creative professional. I want to thank Nao for coming onto the show. She's truly inspiring, and I'm grateful for having a chance to talk to her. Links to Nao's work, Instagram, as well as to some other things mentioned during our conversation can be found in the show notes at creative.voyage/podcast. Don't forget that you can follow @creative.voyage on Instagram, and you can also email me directly on hello@creative.voyage. I welcome all types of feedback, the good ones, but also the critique. Bring it on. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and until next time, my friends, take care.